All right, getting into Genesis 30 very quickly before we start. I want to just bow our heads in prayer, get focused in. Lord, I ask that you help to strengthen us and energize us. It's the middle of the week, it's been long. It's our third Bible study, and usually we're not doing this kind of rigorous study. So I hope, Lord, that you can invigorate us and keep us focused on your word, on your truth. Help me to bring about the narrative in a way that is pleasing to you. Help me to find the words that you want me to say. Help me to actually get out of the way so you can do it. I ask that you open ears and open eyes so people can see and hear the truth of the word. And we ask all these in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Genesis 30. So, just going to get right into it because remember, we had Leah having lots of children and Rachel having none. And so when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? So this is a very different thing than what happened with Isaac and Rebekah. When Rebekah was like, I'm barren, Isaac prayed to the Lord. He entreated the Lord for her sake, right? Rachel is like, I'm barren, and she's more demanding. She's like, give me children or I'm going to die. And he gets angry. Very, very different dynamic between Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel here. And so, Jacob knows it's a her thing because it has to be, right? Because he's had sex with
Mm.
Leah enough that producing's happened there, so it's got to be a Rachel thing, and it might
Right.
be a God thing. And so, she does what her grandmother Sarah does, and that is, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and heard also my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. And Dan means judge. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. Right, so this is not a one-time thing. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. And Naphtali means wrestling, right? So now Jacob has 6 children by 2 different women, none of whom is his favorite wife. He is obviously not complaining, like his grandfather Abraham, not complaining here. He's having sex with Leah, he's having sex with Bilhah. This is again the idea of I can adopt a child. Like my maid is sort of my property and her children are like my children, not in a like overbearing way, but in a steward way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not meant to be like the slavery we think of now. It was not that way. And so, 2 things about Dan and Naphtali. Dan ends up losing his birthright. He ends up losing his heritage. He ends up being very prone to idolatry. And I tend to think Dan in the modern day is Italy.
Mm.
Um, and Roman Catholicism is very idolatrous. And the Vatican is very idolatrous and focused on a lot of the wrong things, focused on the tradition and the death of Jesus and not the relationship and the life of Jesus. So that and of course you when you see like Roman Catholicism, it's very judgy
Mm-hmm.
if you know anything about Roman Catholicism. And so there's something to be said for Dan and Naphtali. We don't see a lot in the narrative. He's just kind of there. He's one of the 12. He goes along, like he has no claim to fame. Like Judah we'll see again. Simeon and Levi we'll see again. Reuben we'll see again. Dan we see down the line in Kings and some of the other places. Naphtali just is there. And I think it's interesting that Rachel thinks she won. She's wrestled with her sister and she's prevailed because, like, where? Like, I don't see this as prevailing. Like, your handmaid had 2 kids. Leah still has more kids. They're still direct. They're older. So where's the win here, right? Um,
Right.
And I think the only possible win could be in taking attention away from Leah, but even still, it's not necessarily on Rachel, right? Now you've just added more cluster to the mix. Oh,
Mhm.
Terry popped in. So, the other thing, of course, I think is interesting is wrestling becomes a pretty prominent thing that we see because Jacob is also going to wrestle with God. Hey, Terry. We're at Genesis 30, 8, 30 dot dot 8. And so when Leah saw that she had left bearing, right? She's not having any more kids. They're not having any more sex, really. She took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob to wife. So now we have a full-on baby making competition, right? Now we have it's gotten personal, right? It's definitely, I want more than you have. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Gad again means troop. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. And Asher means happy. And Reuben, oh, so I'm going to hold there really quickly. So now we've got 8 kids, 4 from Leah, 2 from Rachel's handmaid, 2 from Leah's handmaid, none from Rachel. And Jacob is obviously having no qualms with any of this. He's got 8 kids and no problems. The fact that 3 of them out of the 3, none of them are Rachel, and one of them is only one of them is his wife, and the other 2 would be considered concubines.
Mhm.
So Jacob's got 2 wives and essentially 2 concubines right now. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest. So now remember, time is passing. Reuben's the firstborn. It has to be at least 8 years since Reuben's birth, at the
Mhm.
least, because if they're having kids every year, it has to be at least 8. It might be more than that. Maybe Reuben is 12, 13, because he's out in the field, right? And so he's in the field in the days of wheat harvest. So probably not playing, probably learning, probably working, probably doing something that is more productive than childish. And he finds mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. Hold on one second. So, mandrakes were believed to help with pregnancy, right? So she's saying, like, give me this root, give me this herb that will help me conceive, help me be more fertile, right? Dandelion root, sometimes people say that too. And Rachel here, we see, like, not unlike Sarah, trying to like push things along. She's not being terribly patient in this, right? First, she's saying, Jacob, give me kids. Then she's saying, okay, I can't have any. Zilpah, go, Bilhah, go have sex with my husband. Then she's saying, Leah, give me your mandrakes. Like she's like very desperate to be pregnant and not necessarily to be a mother so much as to be not the only one who doesn't have Jacob's children, right? Because now everybody has them but her. And so Leah says unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou takest away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. Right. So we can tell a few things from here. One, Leah's harboring a resentment that's not true or not fair. Okay. Jacob was never meant to be her husband. So
Mhm.
you can't say that you took my husband. No, it's the other way around. A one. Two, Rachel has the kind of say so over Jacob's schedule because Rachel is the one that's bargaining Jacob's time for Reuben's mandrakes, right? So Rachel's probably the wife he's with the most. we can kind of tell that if she has the authority to say, and of course, not surprisingly, that's who he wanted to marry. And so she too is a traitor. She too is making transactions. She too is doing this sort of contending and this wrestling that is also indicative of her husband. They're very similar in that regard. We'll see that a couple times in the narrative. So Jacob comes out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, Thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Obviously, it didn't, none of this is stopping Jacob. Obviously,
Right.
Jacob's very, full of testosterone. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the fifth son. Now, again, that's her fifth son. It's the ninth son of them all. So she's very fertile. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. And Issachar means wages of a hire. Right. So pretty much everybody's name is indicated in what they're exclaiming at the time. And then Leah conceived again, and she bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endowed me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him six sons. And she called his name Zebulon. And Zebulon means dwelling, and my husband will dwell with me. Now, this is always kind of sad because, like, Leah's finding a lot of hope in her ability to produce, right? And I said this last time, like, Leah has six of the 12 patriarchs. Like, she has a lot of kids. She's about to have another one, but a girl this time. And so she does feel blessed, but it is also she's trying to do it to earn the love of her husband, which is never going to really happen, not in the same way that he obviously loves Rachel. And so I do feel bad for Leah all the time. I think that God tries to compensate a little bit, like Jacob loves Rachel, but also here you have this love of maybe the children that you have by him. Because God is fair and he does listen, right? Rachel bartered the time with the mandrakes to try to get pregnant, and instead, Leah gets two kids, and Rachel still has none. So now there are 10 children, none of whom are Rachel's. And they're about to be afterwards, she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah, right? So Dinah is the first girl that we see, and she will become important in a few chapters. And it means judgment or vindicated. And there will be a judgment that happens and a vindication that happens surrounding her as well. So even though that's not in her namesake at this moment, it will be in her namesake in her story, which not a huge story, but it is a little snippet that we'll get. And then finally, God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, The Lord shall add to me another son. And Joseph means to add. And so when we get to the Joseph story, a lot is added on to Joseph. Joseph's very, very blessed. He's also the favorite son. The other thing I was talking to someone about today, as far as God closing up wombs, um, is timing, right? Like God knows the order of operations. And so Joseph can't be born before he's in an ideal place to go help to save Egypt from a famine. If he's born 10 years earlier or he's born 10 years later, he's going to exist out of the time he needs to be in to be very helpful in the Egypt story, right? So not only like God, as far as we know, God is not punishing Rachel. There's no reproach to be taken away. She feels that way, but that's not actually true. She's not being punished. God has things in a timely manner. And so when he's closing the wombs up, a lot of times it's because he doesn't want anything out of time or out of season. And so an interesting thing happens with Joseph because he's the 11th son overall for Jacob, but he's the first son, the firstborn son of Rachel and Jacob. So he gets, we'll see this happen down the line. He'll get the blessings of the firstborn, even though he's Jacob's 11th born. Judah will get the birthright. It'll split. And we'll talk more about that when we get there. And so we'll really see that in the Jacob slash Israel's blessing of the 12 patriarchs. And so it comes to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said unto Laban, Send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to mine country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for thy sake. Right? Laban still doesn't want him to leave. Now, it has been at least 21 years, right? 7 that were originally for Rachel, and he duped. Then they get married. He works another 7. In the process, kids are happening. Let's say at least another 7 because more kids happen. So probably 3 groups of 7. Been there about 21 years. That means Jacob's about 70-ish because he was about 50-ish when he left. And so he's at about half of his life because he actually lives like around like 170, I think. So he's like in and around half of his life, but still in all, he's been there for a fair amount of time. And Laban still doesn't want him to leave because Laban is greedy and he knows he's being blessed because Jacob is there. Not
Mm,
just because God is with Jacob, but also because Jacob's very knowledgeable. And now there are 12 hands to help on the farm. Laban also has sons. We'll see that in a moment that are not, that are Rachel and Leah's brothers. So only the 2 daughters, but he has sons as well. We just don't hear about them until
mm,
they get angry, which we will hear about in a minute. And so Jacob says, Appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said unto them, Thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou had before I came, and it is now increased into a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now when shall I provide for my own house also? And he said, right, like he's like, just give me what I am earned. Like I have been with you a while. Out of your own mouth, you know that like I have been blessing, but like at some point I have to have my own establishment. Like I really don't want to stay, honestly. And Laban is the one saying, What shall I give to you? Right? What are the wages that you want? And Jacob said, Thou shalt not give me anything. If thou will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. Now look at the wheels of Jacob turning here, right? He's like, You don't need to give me anything right now. And I will stay on the condition of I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. Right? Like, very easy to see. We don't need to brand them. All of my animals will be the marked ones, and all of your animals will be the unmarked ones. And I will take those. I'm taking care of them all anyway. I will take those, and you take the other. And he'll say, So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the sheep, thou shalt be counted stolen with me. Right? So if I take anything that's not speckled, I stole it from you. And Laban said, Behold, I would it might be done according to thy word. Laban's on board with this transaction, right? He's like, I will keep, because the speckled goats and the spotted cows tend to be less valuable. So Laban thinks he's getting the better end of the deal here. Now he's making a deal with Jacob, so probably not. But Laban thinks he's getting the better end of the deal here, and so he's like, "This is a win-win-win for me, right? I'm giving away the crustier cows and goats. I still have you doing the work, and it really doesn't cost me anything for you to stay. And there's no real time limit set for how long you're going to stay, right? So this feels good for Laban. And so Jacob removed that day the he goats. Actually, I'm sorry, not Jacob, sorry. Laban said, behold, I would, it might be done according to thy word. And he removed that day the goats that were ring streaked and spotted, and all the she goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hands of his sons. So Laban is trying to dupe Joseph here, Jacob here, right? Laban takes all of Jacob's cows and puts them in the hands of his sons. So it looks like when Jacob goes in the field, there's no cows. Like Jacob's not going to know this, right? So he set 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white strakes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ringstraked, speckled, and spotted. Right. So what he has done here, kind of like the mandrakes, he has taken these rods, cracked them open, taken the insides out, put them in the water, and it has made them conceive speckled cows and goats. And so he tries to be covert right back. Like he brings them where they need to go, and he tries to be covert right back because he's been feeding these flocks for a while. He knows that some are missing. Like he knows what Laban has done here. And so he also setting the rods is to literally corral them. So he's putting the rods in place to put them all together so that they want to have sex. Right? So he's basically breeding essentially here. He is breeding new speckled cows and goats because Laban took the ones he originally wanted. And the flocks conceived before the rods and brought forth cattle, ring streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate. Oh, sorry. I'm rereading, I think. And the brown, actually, no, I'm going to keep going. And Jacob did separate the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring streaked, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves and put them not unto Laban's cattle, right? So he is paying himself off here because he knows what Laban did. So he is paying himself off. And it comes to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. So not only is he breeding, he's breeding stock, right? He is breeding fine stock of cow and goat. And he's giving the weaker ones, not speckled, to Laban. So he's still keeping up his argument or his transaction. Laban did not. Jacob is, but with a twist. And again, this is because Jacob is very smart when it comes to breeding. He's very good at farming. He's very good at animal husbandry. And so here we have the first case of really understanding animal husbandry in the Bible. And Jacob absolutely does. And we saw that when he gets to the well with Rachel and he's like, hey, it's too early to bring the sheep in, right? So he's making stronger animals for himself and weaker animals for Laban. And again, oh, let me just finish out here. And the man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maidservants and menservants and camels and asses, right? So he is building his wealth. This takes time. At least a breeding season, maybe two, maybe three, right? Like this is taking time too. So he's like living in a sort of now a little contentious, plotting long term against Laban. So it's definitely when it gets to this place where the peace can't be kept anymore and the wealth is happening and the jealousy is happening and people are really kind of like, don't want to let you go. It's always time to be like, hey, this ain't working, And that is where Jacob is about to be. And this is some riots about to go between the two. And that is Genesis 30. Questions on it, thoughts on it?
I just love it how like everything happens in God's timing, and it took me all forever to learn that
Yeah, you ain't
because
never learned it.
I'm very impatient, and so it like it's taken me a really long time to just sit back and realize that everything happens in God's timing, and if it's meant to happen, then it's meant to happen.
That is a fact. That is an absolute fact. And I was having a conversation with a couple people today about it, about how impatience is like one of the big, this is not to, I'm not throwing stones. I'm not throwing stones here, but like one of the big hallmarks of disobedience is because like being impatient is a thing that makes things happen more quickly out of time, and God's got to fix it, right? Like
Right.
Sarah and Hagar, like God had to fix that. Someone said, and it wasn't me, it was a really cool point. He was like, what would have happened if Sarah would have just waited? Like how would have God have brought the blessing to pass in a different way? You
Mm.
know, and I was like, you're so right. Like all these things that people make happen more quickly, they're still on God's time. They're still on God's plan. It's just you brought it to pass faster than he wanted to, and his way was probably better, but now we don't know because he got to fix what you did. Right? And
Right.
so like that is the way of it, right? Like let us say that Jacob never married Leah. Then Joseph is the only one born. And then we don't have the contention between the brothers and him. And we don't have this like feuding all the time. And we don't have, but people get in the way a
Mhm.
lot, constant. And so, yes, it does. It, it's so wild because it happens in God's time, but also he accounts for the mistakes that happen out of his time. Like that is a thing I always notice in the Genesis story, which is like so wild to me that there are things he absolutely will not allow to happen out of time. And I think like the birth of Isaac is one. I think the birth of Joseph is another. And then there are things that happen and probably he didn't want them in that way, but they happened and he allowed it because every child comes from God. So
Mhm.
Ishmael's birth and all the other the two handmaids' birth. mm, But yeah, there's probably so many ways that we could not act out of time. Like I see it in my own life where I'm like, I'm trying to step way out in front of God here. And I messed this thing up. And now he's got to fix it. Because I'm always ready to go before the thing is done. And at one point he used to let me get away with that, but now he's stopped. Like now, if I try to leave before he wants me gone from a place, like the shifts I'm trying to make now in my personal life, in April, I wanted to make back in November, but I was
Mm.
6 months early. Like I was way out of time. And it was just no's everywhere. Everything was a no. Every lead I pursued was a no. And I was like, okay, God, like I'm just gonna just get comfortable right where you have me and try to not hate what I'm doing here. And like, and I was like, oh God, now I see it. Like here we are 6 months later. Now I see why you made me wait. This makes more sense. I got it. So the timing of God is really wild. And it's one of the
Mhm.
hardest things. I say this all the time on TikTok. It's one of the hardest things for people to understand is the timing of the thing. Um, and the pacing of a thing, right? Timing and pacing in narrative and in teaching is very hard for most people. It is for writers, it's really tricky. Getting the timing right, getting the narrative pacing, it's a skill. And that's true in
Mhm.
our own lives. Like getting the timing right is the more we rely on God and the less we get in our own flesh, the easier.
Mhm.
I will add another one of my friend Dean's points because these are to give the person credit. His name is Dean, and he was making these brilliant points, and I was like, yes, so good. But the point that he made was, oh shoot, I just had it and I forgot it. Dang, what did I just say? What did I just say? I wanted to make Dean's other good point, and now I think I forgot what it was.
About timing.
Yeah. It was like not quite timing. It was something else. Now I've lost it. It's about rewards. It was about rewarding, but I can't remember what it was now. Oh well, if it comes back to me, I'll bring it back up. But yeah, so timing is a really, really interesting thing, and it is hard to tell in the Bible sometimes. Oh, that was it. That was it. When he was talking about Sarah, and he was like, we do this thing where we're like, oh, she wasn't patient and she got out in front of God. And the other side, and he made this point, was she waited for 10 years. Like, we don't wait that long.
Right.
Like, she waited for 10 years before she was like, hey, take Hagar. You know what I mean? And so it was like, it is this kind of a thing too, that their timing was so different than ours. Like our life, like my life, I'm 36, my life's probably half over. Like, I mean, 75 is I'm good. Take me out of here. I'm cool with my life being, I'm at my half life. People used to say like 25 is your quarter life crisis. No, I don't want a quarter life crisis. 25 is like I'm almost halfway there. Like that's where I'm at. Like I'm cool to go back to my father yesterday. You know what I'm saying? And so like we don't get the same amount of time either. So yeah, you're Holly, it's a great point. The timing of things and the patience and waiting and it is very hard. It is very hard to do. And Jacob is really good at it, I feel. Like he's good at playing a long game.
Hmm.
Jacob plays the long game really well. Um, he has like a really good dynamic between like taking the action and then like riding the thing out. Taking
Hmm.
the action and then riding the thing out. He's very good at that in a way that we don't really see it with Abraham or Isaac or even Joseph, really. So yeah, that's a very good point. Other points before we pop into we have time. Genesis 31.
Nope.
Beautiful. Okay, so we know things are getting a little rocky between Jacob and Laban here. And so he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's has he gotten all the glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Right now, because they know Jacob's getting ready to leave and wanting to leave and taking a pretty substantial inheritance, Laban was fine with it when he thought he wasn't losing anything and gaining a lot. But now, when he sees that he's losing things, and the sons see that they're losing things with Jacob's departure, everybody not so happy, right? Like Laban's countenance is angry. Like the brothers are jealous. And whenever we see jealousy among brothers, it never ends well. It just never ends well. And we'll see it a fair amount of times. Honestly, jealousy among men too, because even like with Isaac's wells and then Abimelech's men's wells, like so anytime we have like male to male jealousy, it's never it's always contentious.
Hmm.
And so Jacob sees what's going on here. He's very observant. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with you. Right? Now you've got what you need. Pop off. Get to go. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field and to his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. And you know that I served, that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times, but God has suffered him not to hurt me. This is all true. Jacob is absolutely being true here. Like, Jacob really doesn't do a lot of deceit of Laban. Even though he does do the animal husbandry, he's still working within the confines of the transaction that they came up with, right? He's just being a little smarter in it. But Laban has actually like lied and duped. He gave Leah instead of Rachel. He took the speckled cows. Like Laban's actually being sort of problematic in a way. And Jacob's aware of it, right? But he obviously, God still blessed Jacob. And so Plus, Jacob's family was growing. It was a safe place for him to be. He didn't have to worry about Esau. And so he's going to recount here that kind of what happened because they're having a private conversation in the field, right? They're removed from the house. Like Jacob does not want them to have anyone overhear what is being talked about here because he's about to make some plans. And so he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And he said thus, the ringstreak shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstreaked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ringstreaked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, Here I am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstraked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land, and return unto the flight of the land of thy kindred. Right. So this is the funny thing about narrative pacing. We don't find out that God talked to Jacob until after God has talked to Jacob. Because when Jacob starts doing the animal husbandry, that's where this dream from God had to happen,
Mhm.
right? And so this is the thing I always talk about with narrative pacing is like sometimes things get put out of time even in the narrative. Like Laban's sons, we don't hear about until they become relevant to the story.
Mhm.
And so, same with Genesis 14, we don't hear about the nations surrounding the Israelites until they become relevant to the story. And so, that's the weird and interesting thing about the Bible and the literary component of it is that sometimes, if you've ever read fiction, you know this happens a lot. The author deviously leaves out a little bit and then it like comes back and it's the twist of the story. And you're like, oh my God, where was that? Well, there you just didn't realize it. It's like, oh, well, that's sneaky of you. It's like, good storytelling a lot of times will draw your attention over here, but the action's happening here and you don't know it until they've put your focus back on the action.
Mhm.
And so what's going on here is that God, this dream that now is not just being revealed to Leah and Rachel, but to us, the reader, as well. We are finding out with Leah and Rachel, but Jacob found out before he started breeding the cows 2 years ago that God had this conversation with him. So
Mhm.
now it makes sense about where Jacob got this knowledge because all the knowledge and wisdom comes from God. And so Jacob knew that he was aligned with God's plan and God's order because there was this dream that he had. And so God reminds him, You made me a vow and I want you to keep it. Go back to where you made that vow, which I kind of mentioned that the other day, and he will. So Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Like their dad didn't give a dowry. Jacob worked for them. That was not the custom of the time. The custom of the time was like what we see with Eleazar and Abraham. Here is the stuff. We are going to take your daughter. That's not what Laban does,
Mhm.
right? So they're asking, like, do we have an inheritance? Like, is there a dowry given for us to go? Like, are we not counted of him as strangers? For he hath sold us and hath quite devoured us also our money. This is gonna bother Rachel. We're gonna see this in a minute. This kind of idea that they're aware of how greedy and selfish their father is, and they're not happy about it. Rachel is a little bit of a firecracker. She's gonna actually do something about it,
Mhm.
and it's gonna end up being not great for her. And so for all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever, lost my place. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children. Now then, there it is. It like cut on my page. Whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So again, they're like, we're with you. Like, we see what's going on here. Whatever God told you to do, do. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels. And he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Padan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. Right? So this is Rachel getting even here. She's mad that there's no inheritance, and she's mad too that there was idol worship in the house, and she's kind of converted a little bit to the God worship, right? So she's like, do what God says to you to do. But Laban has these teraphim, right? These are like little golden statue household gods, the teraphim. And so
Mhm.
what she does is the stolen the images, she takes these golden statues. One, because she knows he shouldn't be worshiping them, but two, because they're worth something. And three, because they matter to Laban. She's pissed. Like she's very unhappy with the way her family and her have been treated. Now,
Mhm.
again, we kind of can't be shocked because also Rachel was promised to Jacob and Laban gave Leah instead. There's a great chance here that she's also harboring resentment to him for that slight. Not
Mhm.
only did you not give us a dowry, not only did you give my husband away to my sister before I got to be with him, but also now we have to steal away like thieves in the night because you won't do the right thing,
Mhm.
right? So Rachel's really feeling some type of way. They leave without a goodbye. They leave like thieves in the night. And he flees with all he has, and he rises up and he passes over the river and he sets his face toward Mount Gilead, right? He crosses the Euphrates. And it was told to Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in Mount Gilead. Remember, like, this is kind of crazy that Laban would do this, honestly. Like, Jacob is moving a lot of people. He's got 11 sons, one daughter, and lots of cattle, and lots of manservants, and lots of maidservants. So even though they had a 3 day lead, Laban was traveling at double the speed to get there with his brethren to try to, like, we don't know what. Maybe we don't know what. We don't know. We about to find out. We don't know what Laban's intentions are here. He'll say one thing. I don't know that I buy it, but again, text says what it says, right? So, um, again, we see the threes and the sevens here, right? We've got those spiritual numbers all the time with the Godhead and spiritual completeness. 3 days journey, 7 days journey there too, of course. Um, but God's not going to stand for it, right? So God comes to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said unto him, take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Then Laban overtook Jacob, right? God is giving him a warning that he would be wise to listen to here. Do not overly flatter. Do not overly condescend. Be fair, because you haven't been, right? So just be fair. Laban overtakes Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountain of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, the gaslighting here, guys. And Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done? That thou hast stolen away unawares to me and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword. The audacity of Laban. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly and steal away from me, and didst not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with songs, with tabret and with harp? Right. So basically, he's trying to make Jacob feel guilty here. And he's like, why did you leave on such bad terms? I would have sent you away with feasts. Well, let's just recount, right? The last feast that Jacob was a part of with Laban, he ended up marrying the wrong daughter. So might not want to have a feast with him, A. B, the last time Jacob said, I want to leave, Laban made a deal to make him work harder, work longer, and took the wages. So, like, Laban can say whatever Laban wants to say, but there's 20 years evidence that he's not going to let him leave easily, fairly, or in any kind of decent manner. So Laban here is a little out of pocket. Not in a way that offends God, because he's still within the bounds, because God's not angry here. We don't see that happen. But in a way that does offend me, because I'm like, Laban, and will offend Jacob also. And so, hast thou not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my goods? Right? So he's like, You haven't even let me kiss my family goodbye, which again, Laban, you did that to your dang self, but okay. And technically, it is sort of in the hand of Laban to do hurt if he actually wanted to attack. This is why I say we don't quite know the intention of Laban. Maybe he's just threatening here. Maybe he really considered it. Like, probably he's just saying this. But even still, it's not really in his power to do hurt because probably if he tried, God would not allow it.
Mhm.
But instead, Laban's just kind of threatening, like, I could hurt you, but I'm going to listen to your God. Which again, there is a little bit of a divide in the divinity here because the God of your father, and also you've stolen my household goods, you've stolen my little godly idols. So Laban, not quite even close to the man of God that Isaac or Jacob is. Which is probably why Laban not even close to blessed in the way Jacob and Isaac were, right? And so there's a lot going on in the family dynamic here, in the Jacob story. We get a lot of drama, you know? And so Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy goods, let him not live. Remember that, please. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. Right? So he's like, I was afraid that you weren't going to let us leave, that you were going to take your daughters back, that you were going to do something underhanded. And also, I don't know who has your goods, Laban, but whoever does, when you find them, they don't get to live. And in that, Jacob pronounces a death sentence on Rachel because he doesn't know Rachel has them.
Mhm.
Not really too big of a shock that she dies in birth with Benjamin, and much more quickly than many of the other people. Her life is not as long as the rest. I tend to think it goes directly to this moment because there's a difference between the covert activity, which is done because God allows it, because it
Mhm.
brings his plan to come to pass, and deception that is in your own will and done for no good reason. Right. And so Rachel did not have to steal these things from her father, but she wanted to because she felt some type of way.
Mhm.
And in my Bible, it says, stolen my gods, not good.
Hmm.
Is that same?
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to make sure I didn't read it wrong. I read it wrong. You're right.
Okay.
You're right. Sorry, stolen my gods. You're absolutely right.
And that's referring to the
To the
little.
teraphim.
Okay.
Yeah. Also his goods, but no, that's a read wrong on my part. Thank you. His gods are his little idol gods,
Right.
and they're little statues. This we're going to see come up actually as a little theme, the little gods, or making the metal gods, right? We see that with the golden calf too. So that, yes, sorry. Wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? And whoever stole the gods, let him not live before our brethren. And so Laban goes into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and had sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. Let me tell you that Rachel's the first person to use the excuse of a period to get out of something. Right? Like if you were ever in gym class and you're like, oh, I can't go to gym today because I have my period. Rachel's the first. You're doing something from great grandma 5 million years ago, right? Like that is the first time that we see the custom of women being used as an excuse to get out
Mhm.
of something. It is smart. It is also a lie. It also doesn't help her in the long run. But they don't get caught, right? So this is the problem with deceit, right? Deceit, steal always leads to lie, always leads to problems. Like why we
Mhm.
try not to do it. And so, um, Jacob gets mad. Jacob is wroth and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Right? So, like, now he's like, not like, I didn't do anything wrong. I still haven't done anything wrong. Don't know where your gods are. Don't know what you're talking. Because again, Jacob doesn't know what we know
Mhm.
as the reader and what Rachel knows. I don't know that we ever find out. I don't know that Jacob ever finds out that Rachel stole these things. I don't, it doesn't come up in the narrative. And so there's no like, and then he buried her and found the teraphim like that, And so we don't know really what Rachel does with them. But Jacob's angry, and rightfully so, because he's been hotly pursued, been treated like a criminal. His stuff has been searched. He's like, departure has been seized and stopped. Like he's he's not being treated fairly here. So finally he gets indignant, which is completely understandable because Laban's been trying to make Jacob feel guilty since 20 verse 25. So 10 verses of trying to make him feel guilty and he's done nothing wrong. And really in this part of the story, Jacob really hasn't done anything wrong. To be fair, even with Esau, the wrong thing I would say is that he lied directly to Isaac when he had the and he says I'm Esau and he's very clearly not. But he's a kind of justified in his anger here. So, whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. Right? He's like, go ahead and tell me what you found. I'll wait. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beast I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Now we're getting the conditions of Jacob's working, and it hasn't been the best. We're not shocked because Laban's kind of a terrible leader. Thus I was in the day of the drought, that the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I have served thee 14 years for thy two daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Right? So, really, we're seeing that Jacob has not been treated fairly in the entirety of the time spent there. And, you know, he had to cut the losses, which we're not surprised about because that's how Laban operates. And he had to stay out when it was cold and when it was without water. And he had to stay out in crappy conditions. He had to stay out when he couldn't sleep. Like he worked really hard for Laban. So now it's not really hard for him to be kind of like righteously indignant because he knows he's carried himself morally upright and Laban has not. And
Mhm.
so, but again, remember, us as the reader, we're just finding out about this now. Like Jacob, you've been suffering for 20 years and we had no idea until this moment. Just as an interesting thing in the narrative. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. He's right. God hath seen mine affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked thee yesternight. Right? Like Jacob's absolutely right. Like if God didn't come to you and tell you don't do anything, you would have come and you would have taken everything from me. Probably. Probably. Like I said, Laban's a slick one. You got to be careful with a slicky slick because but luckily God is with Jacob and he knows it. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughter, or unto their children which they have been born? Okay, so dual thing happening here. One, claiming ownership to something that you no longer own, because Jacob just said he worked for all of it. So you're reneging on your bargain by trying to claim ownership of these things that very clearly are no longer yours. So you're actually proving Jacob's point, one. But two, what he's actually trying to say here is, I love all these things. They all come from me. I wouldn't harm them. What could I do to my own flesh and blood and my own property? Well, a lot, considering on one hand, you're very possessive over things that no longer belong to you. And two, you are very possessive over things that no longer belong to you, right? Like he's kind of proving his point, Jacob's point here. Even though he's trying to show his magnanimity. It's like, not, you're not, though. Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant. I am thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. Right? Calling a truce basically here. Which again is the best option, is to keep the peace if you can. And so Jacob, of course, is going to take a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. It's like a covenantal sacrifice. It's exactly like what he does with God at Bethel, and kind of what Isaac does as well. It's building an altar without actually building an altar. And Laban called it Jager Sahatutha, but Jacob called it Galid. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galid. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is a witness betwixt me and thee. Calling on God to set a sort of controlling watch on Jacob here. Okay. And it's a God that he doesn't even fully subscribe to, because he still has these little tiny idols that he cares about. Probably only cares because they're gold, but even still cares enough that he wanted them back. And so, and like Jacob's going to hurt his daughters. But okay. So Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm, right? So this is something that we see with Abimelech, with Isaac, and Abimelech with Abraham. And it's, I want to have a truce with you because I know you're more powerful than I am. And if you come against me, I'm going to lose. Right? So he's saying, let's not cross this boundary with the intent to harm each other. Why? Because God is with Jacob, which means Laban, you're going to lose if he decides to do it. Same with Isaac, same with Abraham, right? Like these people know the power and might of God in their interactions and dealings with the patriarchs. And so, again, Jacob makes the deal because it makes sense to try to keep the peace when you can, but it's a theme that happens. I recognize your power and I don't want to come across it. It will continue to happen with all the nations surrounding the Israelites. They recognize the power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh, here. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. So that Laban, it does all end well, right? Laban does get this goodbye dinner that he said he wanted to throw, and he does get this, chance to say goodbye peacefully to his family, but probably not without God's intervention, and probably not without a week-long journey in between Laban's house and the site, because Laban probably, he's a hoarder, like he's a greedy, he's a miser. So he probably definitely wouldn't be letting Jacob go. Jacob's very right to say, probably not. And so the kind of covert activity that Jacob did in leaving in the night, once again, sanctioned by God, very much allowed. The overtaking from Laban, not allowed if he overstepped the boundary, which obviously God directly told him. And so, I think Laban is a bit more villainous than we tend to realize. He's kind of like one of our first toxic people, you know. Greed will do that to you. Greed will do that to you. Um, it's hard to get all this success and then watch it go away. People really, it's why our politicians situation's kind of what it is now. It's like, you know, people like they get to a certain type of lifestyle, they get acclimated to it, and then they don't want to lose it. And
Hmm.
so Laban's a little bit like that. But yeah, so that's Genesis 31. And there's a lot that happens there. Any thoughts? Anything coming up? Any insights?
Not that I can think of.
Terry, I appreciate that correction, by the way. All right. Um, we still have more to go in the Jacob story. Jacob's travels also bring about some of his healings from his dealings, I guess. We're going to see him meet Esau next time. Now, we'll meet sometime next week. I plan on doing multiple Bible studies next week as well. I don't know those days yet. Probably someday at 7 o'clock, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday. I have to look. So I don't know. So just stay tuned for that. But otherwise, let us pray out and then we will wrap up because we're right at time. Whew. What a drama, Lord. What a drama we have with Laban and Jacob. And we can't be shocked because Jacob really does make things happen. And so when we read these stories, God, and also these histories, right, they are both very, very real and also sometimes a little distant from us. I always ask, Lord, that you make it make sense for the people. You make it real. You know, you make it contextualized in the way that these people actually lived. And sometimes it's hard to do that justice, Lord, but I always hope and pray that you allow me to do so. We're so grateful that we get to come before you and study your word and learn about these histories and how relevant they are even unto this day. We love you so much. We ask God for your wisdom and your guidance, your protection. Um, we ask for peace. Well, we have peace. We ask for the ability to be peaceful. Um, and we ask for all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Oh, let me stop recording. I had to expand my storage.